Greetings, Earthlings and humans and others, as well as members of the animal kingdom who are lulled into peace when they hear my voice. People send me videos of their animals sleeping peacefully in front of my podcast because for once they have heard a voice of intelligence piercing through this realm of bullshit. Welcome to the Roseanne Barr podcast.
Oh, you see, my patience is growing thin.
We've got another banger of a show today. In the interest of letting people know what's really going on, which I am so committed to, I'm all in on it because I think Americans should know what's been happening that they don't know about because it's been kept from them. I like to put the severed pieces together, as Virginia Woolf said in her book, Three Guineas, the responsibility of the artist, the journalist, the writer, including the comedian, is to put the severed parts together into one conscious piece. And that's what I like to do here on this show. And boy, do I have a great guest. Everybody talks about going down the rabbit hole, us people that like to research on the internet. Everybody talks about going down the rabbit hole. Well, my guest today kind of is the rabbit hole, and we'll discover that in this, the first of several interviews. Help me welcome Patrick Byrne. Hi, Patrick.
Hello, Roseanne. What an honor to be on your show again. And what a perfect person to share this story with.
Well, I'm so excited. I want everybody to have some background on you because, everybody's like, oh, he was the CEO of a great big, company, which I did spend a lot of money in, Overstock, right?
Right. Think of all the money you saved.
I did save so much money, but that's just the aftermath of everything you've done in your life. And so I wanted to start out with you. I really love this. You as an altar boy as a child, right?
Hard to
Is that
believe.
where the story of your adventurous life begins?
Well, I'm not quite sure. I wrote this book, Danger Close, so that other people, other big minds could. And may I say that after watching you and getting to know you in December 2020, the first thing I have to tell people about you is how bright you are. I get how bright you are and how interesting it is that after Michael Flynn, the first big name who really understood the significance of this story is you, Roseanne. So I really commend you. It takes a lot of IQ to wrap your head around this story and digest it. So thank you for doing me this honor. So yes, where did it start? You tell me where it started. I don't know. I think it started with my mom mostly, but I'm not sure where it all started.
But I mean, okay, let me just ask you this. How did you end up in the halls of power? What were the steps you took in the life you lived to end up in the very halls of the utmost power in the United States and the world?
Well, I got a lot of people in those halls quite angry at this moment. Halls of power. Well, I guess you would say I had a fantastic, as I said in my book, my life has been a huge number of tailwinds. My family lived this Horatio Alger dream. So by the time I was in my late teens, my father had become a millionaire and so forth. I had great education. I got to know Mr. Buffett when I was 13. So I just had great heroes, and my mom especially. So that was a big part of it. But I grew up, I used to say as a teenager, I majored in Catholic and I minored in Jew. But after I got through my teenage years, I left and became kind of a seeker. And that took me studying Buddhism and Taoism and Zen. And eventually, when I was in college, the Chinese language. And I was over in China. The first year they opened up to foreigners, to foreign Western kids. I was over there for a year studying Chinese. And that might be where these events really should be rooted. Shall I start? Do you know about remember me writing about my Chinese studies in Beijing?
Yeah, I want to hear about that on this show.
Well, I was studying in Beijing, first the Chinese language. I studied for a year at Dartmouth, but then I was studying Chinese, then Chinese history and thought, including Maoism. Well, I liked ancient philosophy, but including Marxism and Maoism, I was being exposed to. It was very interesting. And While I was there in China, this funny thing happened. I had a French girlfriend for several months, and so every day I spoke Chinese by day and French at night. One night we were at a public place, and this little Asian man came bounding up to me and to us, and we heard him speaking French, and he spoke great French. And anyway, he turned out to be kind of a general from Laos, who had once taken his country over in a coup, and then the CIA had chased him out. And he befriended me over a few dinners, and then eventually asked me to get a letter into the hands of the United States government. And I thought about it, and I said, well, it didn't seem too hard. He was living in exile in China, and the Chinese government was supporting him. And he evidently had a bunch of soldiers loyal to him in Laos. Who knows what the geopolitics were, but he was living kind of in seclusion in a state guest house in Beijing. And after getting to know me, he asked me would I deliver a certain letter that he had written. I don't even know what was in the letter, but I thought about it, and I said, I can do that for you. And I did it. And that's 1983, October 1983 would probably be the first. I think if you're looking for that kind of a contact between
Yeah.
me and Uncle Sam, that's where
Right. I want to see the through line. So you did do that.
I did do that.
And
And then
can we know who it was or any of that good stuff?
his name was Kong Lei, Kongle. If you look him up, he took over his own country in, I think it was about 1960, 61 or somewhere there. He saw what was coming. The communist Vietnamese on one side, America on the other, were going to rip his country apart. So he took over and he threw both sides out. He threw the Pathet Lao out. He threw America and the CIA out. And so he was this independent nationalist. And then he got overthrown by a guy named Pumi Nozavan some years later, backed by the CIA. So that was the guy. His name's Kong Lei. He's dead now, but the history books will show he was living in Beijing in 1983. Anyway, I don't want to go down too many details you're not interested in. What else would you like to know?
Well, isn't that all tied into the war in Vietnam, though?
Yeah, that was. But how it's significant to me was that 5 years later, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs under Ronald Reagan, when he was retiring, Jack Vesey, was asked by Ronald Reagan to reestablish peace with Vietnam. And he sent me a message. He knew about this letter I had delivered 5 years earlier to the United States government. And I took it to the embassy and found the right person to give it to and gave it to him. That was it. But I heard 5 years later, I heard from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs saying, would you come meet me? And I spent a day with him. And he said, look, my last mission in life for service to the country is to reestablish peace with Vietnam. Would you be willing to assist me? And there were no diplomatic relations. I was at Stanford recovering from cancer and studying sort of mathematical logic and computation theory, but also.
How old were you? How old were you then?
I was 23, and I got out of Dartmouth. Yeah, I was in the hospital for a year I was in the hospital for 7 months after Dartmouth with cancer. And actually I had it 3 times in my 20s. That was the first time I got out, and I was at Stanford, and I was doing development economics as well. I spoke Chinese, I spoke French. I was kind of a logical, rather than them using a government agency, which would take a whole bunch of lawyers and millions of dollars. He found a grad student who was willing to go over. The Vietnamese government would host me, and they would show me. Am I giving you more detail than you wanted to know? I don't want to.
No. I love it.
Yeah, well, his discussions, Reagan had asked him to do this. His name was General Jack Vesey, and his discussions had reached the point that the Vietnamese they had 3 or 4 trips over there with his counterpart, the foreign minister Nguyen Ngo Thach, very famous guy from the Vietnam War. And they had reached the point where the Vietnamese were saying, if you're serious about this, will you do something humanitarian for us to show us this isn't just talk? So he was saying to me, Byrne, imagine you had a budget of $250,000 or $300,000. Go over and see ways you could spend that in Vietnam that would do the most humanitarian good and buy us the most credit with them. And then so all I had to do was go over and sort of study for a week or two. I spent 2 weeks being shown different needs, and came back and wrote a term paper with about 15 ideas on how you could spend $20,000 here, $30,000 there, and make a difference in a very, not just cosmetic, but a very visible, clear, quick difference for several hundred people in each place. So I had a bunch of these kind of entrepreneurial ideas that
Well, that's kind of the invention of microfinance.
I knew this was around the time that the guy was doing that. This was 1988. The guy, Muhammad Yunus, was just in the 80s getting going with that. And I knew one of his disciples was my economics teacher. And an
Mhm.
important thing to note is because of this, Vietnam was at the time a Soviet client state. So because
Right.
I was there on behalf of the U.S. government, even though there was no embassy or diplomatic relations. So one has to assume that the Soviet KGB was told by the Vietnamese that there's this American guy here doing this. So because of that, I want to make clear I've never worked for intelligence. Although I continued to have this second career doing these kinds of favors when asked for the government, none of it's intelligence. I've never worked for the CIA. My red line was I'll never have anything to do with the CIA. But anytime you have something that can have some way where I can make some little contribution to peace, feel free to call. And it's been the honor of my life that I got rarely, on occasion. I don't claim any big credit. I've had an opportunity on a number of occasions to step in and make some little nudge the cart of peace forward a bit. And I'd never been married or had or anything. This was kind of what my second life was, as opposed to a family. I had my business entrepreneurship, and then I did these things on the side when asked.
What do you think? Well, I mean, can I be nosy and say,
Sure.
what was that like some kind of thing because you had survived cancer? Was that a kind of a gratitude thing of giving back, being
Yes,
a peace? Uh-huh.
very much. There was many long nights of the soul.
Uh-huh.
I had cancer, and somewhere there I started revaluing all values, as Nietzsche said. And really, the thing that comes out on top is if you can find opportunity. One would be to be a great artist and entertain people like yourself. And I know comedy is especially hard way to do that. But another way would be I realized if I can find some way to serve humanity. I was trying to think of what's worth going through what I'm going through. When I was basically in a hospital for 3 years, and finally it all came down to those two ideas. And I'm not any good at comedy, so all right. So yeah, the opportunity. Go ahead.
How is your cancer? How's your relationship with cancer right now?
Well, it's frankly, since you asked, I'm 61 and it's been 40-year end of life situation. I've had
Wow.
now 115 surgeries and I've stopped my heart 400 times.
Oh,
So I've had 500 death trips.
Wow.
do you remember any of them? I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
do you have the conscience to remember? Really?
Well, out of 22,000 days on Earth, I've spent 800 of them in hospitals. So hospitalization, I'm kind of a gourmet, an aficionado of hospital life. Yeah.
So,
Anyway,
so you feel protective, I would imagine. I mean, if I was walking in your shoes, I would feel, and I didn't have any children or those kind of things. I would feel that I was a living. I would give my life as a living legacy in the act of peace. Also, because that would be your highest use, right? That all those dark nights of the soul, you would figure out my highest use, whatever time I have left, is to be an instrument of peace in this
you
horrible world.
you sound like my mother. I think my mom and dad taught me when I was a kid that sort of the highest thing you can do in your life is be a peacemaker. That really is a message from my mom. And if they told you you only got a couple months to live, what most guys would do, and I'm sure what I would do, wouldn't be too productive. But when they tell you you've got 6 months to live or a year to live, you're not going to just go you're not going to go on spring break for a year. So having the opportunity to do something like that meant something.
But
And then,
it's to leave a legacy, right?
yeah, well, it
When I
just,
look at you and read your book, and I tried to get a copy, but I ordered on Amazon. I didn't get a copy. I had to read it on Amazon. But do you have a copy that you can hold up and we can talk about?
Yeah, that would be
I
great.
don't, I gave it away. I was traveling with one, but I gave it away.
We're gonna put in the snippets
We
and all
will.
that.
We'll put it in a graphic. But
People will look into it.
what's the title? It's
Danger
tell us.
close. Domestic extremist threat number one comes clean, with an introduction by preface by Michael Flynn and General Michael T. Flynn, and the introduction by Maria Butina.
Yeah, you were enemy number one, right?
Yeah, I
Well,
literally.
I don't want to go into that one yet because
Okay.
I still want to go into how you got there. Because
Okay.
here you were, and what kind of favor were you doing when you decided that you were gonna? I don't know how to put it. What put you in contact with Hillary Clinton?
Well, they at the time I was already working on the Russia hoax.
This episode is really good and it gets even better. I mean, we've already recorded, I've already edited it. He's going to come back and tape with us tomorrow. And the second part,
For
I
part two.
expect.
I can't wait
Yeah.
for part two because that's where he's going to drop some big old cherry bombs.
Yeah. And he has through this whole episode.
Bigger.
And I know. So I just want people to know this happened late. We got Patrick. He came on. We broke it into two parts. So this is part one. This is explaining, his backstory and this fantastical story about basically like espionage with Obama. This is one of my favorite episodes ever, if not my
It's spy
favorite.
versus spy, but it's like how this guy, he brought them down. He single-handedly brought them all down. He's got them all at heel. And then what he did about it. That's next week.
I know, and we are taping that tomorrow, just so you know.
Yeah.
So we're going to get back to the episode. I'm actually breaking this because we signed on a new sponsor, and just to explain what it is it's a mortgage company. You can call them and get a loan for a new house like any mortgage company, but they're not owned by the banks or any creepy people. They're actually family ran from top to bottom. I like family run businesses like our podcast here because you know that they're not going to screw you over because they want to leave it to their kids, so they're not going to do anything nefarious. So that's
Not
also
me. I'm not leaving y'all none.
I know. I already know that. I don't even know why I do this friggin' podcast. They specialize in refinancing. So if you're a homeowner, this company, AmericanFinancing.net, which I'll let you read it, you can actually call for free and go to their website and see if you qualify, because what they're doing that's so amazing and why I'm really excited to talk about this is they're saving people through that process about $800 to $900 a month, which
Great.
for anybody. I know you're a big old rich lady, but $900 a month, you know what that means to people, and that's their average.
Yeah,
and that's legitimate.
Food. That's food money and gas money.
That's food money for you for like an hour, but for most people, that's no. But it's just there's a lot of things a mortgage company can do. It's not just buying a house, refinancing. A lot of people do it. And I would trust this company above all else. They are legitimate. I'm telling you, I looked them up.
It's an opportunity to regain control of your finances, and you can't ignore it. So, because your finances are too significant a thing to ignore, so call 866-890-8585. That's 866-890-8585. Or visit americanfinancing.net/Roseanne.
I met in July of 2015. I met this young woman, Maria Butina. Now, what's important to know is they say this all started the Crossfire Hurricane started in July of 2016 when they became aware of her. That's Peter Strzok's last and final position. That's a flat lie. They became aware of her at the latest in July of 2015 because I reported her. There's this very famous meeting of her and Donald Trump where when he was a candidate in Las Vegas, she stood up and asked him a question and they interacted. Later, when he was president and they arrested her, they showed that clip 1,000 times on TV to associate the two of them. Well, 3 days before that happened, there's a libertarian convention in Las Vegas every year called Freedom Fest. And you've been to it, I bet, right? Have you been to? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was asked to keynote opening and Trump was the keynote close in 2015. So 3 days before she did that with Trump, she approached me and we had a 90-minute lunch, during which time she asked me to come to Russia and give a speech at the central bank and then meet a bunch of powerful people that she was connected to. Because of my security clearance, because of this, and I don't mean to overstate it. I take very little credit. Most of my relationship has been academic. Most of the time, it's just me going in with a PowerPoint and someone asked me to come into some facility and talk about something I talk about publicly. But sometimes I get to make these other little favors. So because of that, I needed a security clearance, and because of that, here's this girl asked me to come, an attractive young Russian girl, asked me to come over to Russia with her and meet these big players and such. I had to report that, so I reported that 3 days before she asked Donald Trump that question. So I can assure you, she was
What
already.
question what is the question she asked Trump, just so everybody will
Rather
remember?
innocuous about what do you think of the future of U.S.-Russian relationships? Could they be better? Things like that. But what's key is the feds were already all over her. They knew about her 3 days earlier. And every move she then made in the United States, every move was watched, was anticipated. They knew every one of them. Often before they happened, we ended up having an affair with permission of Uncle Sam. We had an affair. She was living with this Republican guy. She had an affair with me on this, like every 6 weeks. Hey, come meet me in some city, Maria. I'll show you the city. We'll have a little tryst and we'll get to know each other. And this is and she's a very decent girl, but we had kind of an intellectual bond very quickly. And that started, just so you're aware, I'm a single, bachelor, no women in my life. And I know I'm a lot taller and handsomer when I stand on my wallet as well. So at the time, I was also Wired magazine. If you look up my name in Wired, Patrick Byrne Wired, you'll see that I'm the messiah of Bitcoin, which means I have a lot of groupies in different cities, just like I'm sure you do, Roseanne. And
Sure.
I go, and so it's not
I
that
got a lot
unusual.
of guys asking me for Bitcoin.
Well, so it wasn't that unusual that a young woman came up, but that she had such a backstory was interesting. I reported it, and that's why it's important to note the Russian collusion story really starts in July of 2015. It was all set up from that day forward. From that day forward, I knew what they were doing. She told me, look, I'm schmoozing. Am I giving you too long an answer? Should I go on?
No.
Or
No, it's good.
We're hanging on every word. Are you kidding?
Yeah,
she told me, look, I'm over here. I have a mentor. And I'm not a spy. I'm not connected, Patrick, to FSB, but I know FSB and I know all the. She put it this way, Patrick, there are 50 oligarchs who run Russia, but there are 7 who really run Russia. I am on very close personal terms with 4 of 7. So, and she said she was very close with his Senator Alexander Torzhin, vice chairman as well of the central bank. And she told me that there was basically that they were the liberals of Russia, liberals in the sense of they hoped someday Russia would rejoin the Western liberal peaceful tradition, and that they had a gun rights club that had been set up by Mikhail Kalashnikov, which is almost a mythically important name to the Russians. And it was about gun rights, but it was really the simpatico people in Russia. See, I'm a disciple of Milton Friedman, and Milton was a friend. And he did this thing where he gave me his name for 10 years when he died. He appointed me the head of the Friedman Foundation, which was supposed to really expire at his death. But he and I were friends, and he asked me to lead it for 10 years, which to me was like Isaac Newton had asked, Milton Friedman. So because of that doesn't mean anything to 99% of the world, but to about 1%, that means something. And Maria was the 1%. Right. So that's the background on Maria. But what's interesting, so whenever you think about the Maria story, think of it in 2 levels. One is the real story of what she was and what she was doing. The other story, and the more important story, is how was our government responding? And our government was not responding at all like they normally would.
So wait a minute. So she was a person who was representing liberal Russians, a liberal Russian kind of westernizing view.
Yes, this was her pitch. And let's set aside the question of, is this a come on? Is this just a line? Right. Somebody said to me once, somebody in government said, Patrick, don't you think that if the Russians wanted to send someone at you, they'd send a good-looking girl who wants to talk about John Locke? Well, that's exactly what Maria is. She wants to talk about John Locke and Milton Friedman and Bitcoin and things like this. And so that was her pitch. Set aside whether she's really a spy, and that was her. I think she is what she thought she was. There's some question in my mind about what was going on behind her, but she was saying, look, I'm here basically to build relationships into the Hillary, Cruz, Rubio, and Trump camps. So whoever wins, Russia has a back channel into that administration, and we can start having real discussion and not He's not this deep, not whatever's going on now that's getting in the way. That was her
Right.
pitch. Well, that worried me a little bit. For one thing, I was optimistic because I've taken part in some peace activities. And I was, it could
Right.
lead, stranger things have happened that something like that would lead to something. But I was sort of 30% worried. Here's a woman who knows all about the FSB and the oligarchs of Russia. She's told me she's going to be moving in with her boyfriend in DC, a big shot Republican guy. And she's going to be focusing on schmoozing her way into Hillary, Cruz, Rubio, or Trump. And you get why that's a little dicey from a counter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was sort of 60% optimistic, but kind of 30% worried that this is what she's doing. And even if she's well intentioned, you just don't want people, you have to be careful about this kind of stuff.
Right.
So I reported this, and with the understanding that I would eventually that they should know there was somebody doing this, and there was both opportunity and risk. And that's when I'd say Uncle Sam started acting strange, July of 2015, not 2016, which tells me the whole Russia thing was started to be set up by July of 2015. And shall I continue how they did it?
Yeah.
Well, so I knew everyone she met often before she met them. A few of the meetings were arranged by me at the request of Uncle Sam. Nothing I did was without their approval, including when I went to see her. I said, I'm not going to see her again unless you guys give me a green light, because I don't want anyone to say later, hey, Byrne, what do you? So they gave me green light. I saw her again, immediately turned into this physical relationship as well. But she's not like she's really a good girl. But we had this. She was chosen by Mikhail Kalishnikov to do this, and because I was Milton Friedman's chosen guy, there was a little bit of kismet, and we were excited to know each other. But I said, let's just meet every 6 weeks. When you get bored, we'll meet somewhere, and we pick some city to meet: New York, Miami, San Francisco, and I'll show you a good dime. You get to see the city. We'll spend a few days. I thought I'll be learning more to pass up the chain of command, maybe so I can open the doors for her she wants open. But I wasn't going to introduce her to anyone unless they told me to. And I could tell you by November, December what they were doing. She had met somebody in Hillary's camp, and then they had given a prophylactic briefing to Hillary to keep her out. And then Maria was happy, because she didn't like Hillary at all. She likes the Republic. She's much more of a Ron Paul type. Her politics were Ron Paulish. So she was excited about Cruz, Rubio, or Trump. And to be frank, the United States government was just letting her go at it in a way that they would never normally do. But they were aware of her the entire time. I'll give you an example.
I get it. Okay. I see.
Let me give you a good example with Chris Christie.
Yeah.
Now, Chris Christie reached out, wanted to meet me. People think of me as a New Hampshire businessman. I was living in Utah doing Overstock at the time, but he reached out. I reported it. They say, take Maria with you, bring her to meet Christie, just the last few minutes of your meeting. So I brought her with me. I picked her up in a helicopter in New York, took her up this very romantic thing to New Hampshire, met with Christie for an hour. The last 5 minutes, I brought in Maria. It turned out later they used that to get a FISA warrant on Chris Christie. Anyone Maria spent, if she just shook someone's hand, they couldn't get a FISA warrant. But by having her spend 5 minutes with him, that meant they could get a FISA on Christie and then listen to anyone he spoke to and anyone they spoke to, 2 hops. So they were using Maria to smudge up the Republican Party. And I could have.
Well, they were using you to use her.
Right. And I could have told you that in December of 20.
And you're the one that did the right thing by reporting, because you didn't want to get in trouble for Logan Act or any of that, whatever,
No, I don't have any worries about that.
You didn't want to get in trouble. You didn't want to do anything that wasn't okay with the United States government.
That's 30%, and 60% was I was actually initially optimistic that this could lead to, something.
Yeah,
like
but you did it right. You went by the book, and they end up using you.
But there was a last 10% reason. The last 10% reason. Did you? Shall I save that? It's a little bit harder to explain. My last 10% reason was I wanted to see how they would react. I wanted to see what they would do with her. I had become aware at that point that, or suspicious that whoever was pulling my puppet strings was corrupt. And I can't say why.
When did you get suspicious?
2010.
Oh.
2010, and I can't say why. Certain things happened over several years that made me think there was someone in my chain of command who was no good Nick. But I didn't. But then this happened with Maria, and so 10% of me was thinking, well, I use this horrible example in the book, but back when I was a wrestler, I used to.
You were a wrestler?
I was a wrestler, yeah, wrestler, jujitsu, all that stuff. We used to take a piece of plastic, dip it in boiling water, and bite into it and make a mouth guard. Mm-hmm. In maybe the most awful sense, what happened subsequently is my fault, because I took Maria, who seemed to want to be dipped into the national security pot. I said, let her dip in there and let's see what bite marks the deep state makes on her. I'd become suspicious at that point that there was a corrupt deep state, and I thought, if I'm right, they're going to use. I just knew that we would get a dental impression of the deep state, and ultimately that was my goal. So we have, in the story of Maria Butina, we have the perfect dental impression of the deep state.
Ma, Charlize, we've been selling this pretty well, and I gave some to Jenny and some of my friends that are females. They swear by it now. They love it. The Charlize stuff you've been using, you look great. And the important thing I want to say about this, other than it's a great makeup and skincare line or whatever, is that it's toxin free. And the woman that developed this was having trouble in her family with cancer. She looked at the ingredients in makeup and saw all this shit that gets people sick, and she was like, why am I putting this in my body? So she actually developed this stuff from scratch. It's toxin free, it's really good for you, and it works really well too. It's kind of a nice, because sometimes when you do that toxin free, it doesn't work, you know.
No, this works. It works really, really well.
Yeah, you've been using it.
It's got all these serums. And these serums contain ingredients like suspended oxygen,
no idea what that
apple skin extract, and essential minerals that can help diminish the look of aging, and they're completely toxin-free, which is great. So whether you're looking to pamper yourself or searching for the perfect gift, Charlize beauty products are the answer. And here is the best part. For a limited time, you can get 20% off the entire Charlize store when you use the code RB at charlize.beauty/RB. So what are you waiting for? Treat yourself or a loved one to the gift of radiant, calm skin with the Charlize beauty products. Head to charlize.beauty/RB and use the code RB for big savings today.
Yeah, and look great.
It's good stuff.
It really is
Yeah,
good stuff.
right?
Yeah, no, I think that's why people are buying it and telling us about it.
Because they used her meeting with Chris Christie to get a fake
FISA. And that's just one of dozens. They knew about all her meetings. There was one meeting, some big shots, some mockers in the party were trying to arrange a meeting between Maria and Don Jr. at a convention. I think it was I know it was in the South. It was either a Christian convention or it was a gun rights convention. And someone was setting up this secret meeting for him and Maria. And I reported that. And I said, normally I'd say, what would I do? Shall I whisk her off? They'd say, whisk her off to the Bahamas for a weekend or something. So I did. I'm warned, by the way, that my lifestyle sounds strange to people. So I just apologize. But everyone know I'm a bachelor. I've never pretended to be anything else.
A rich guy.
Yeah,
you're a rich guy doing a favor, and you're
so this is
a peaceful economist, which is unheard of.
Yeah,
which is great.
And I'm taller and handsomer when I stand on my wallet, and I know that.
Right.
But she was kind of a groupie I'm not groupie, but a Bitcoin advocate. It was. I think we had this great intellectual. Anyway, she said, or they told me, don't whisk her off. Let it happen. Let it happen. Well, that's very unusual. And that's when I could have told you what they were doing. I shouldn't have opened my bottle before I called, my water bottle. I started thinking, what we're doing here is we are creating a Can-O scandal, Can-O Russian scandal, that these guys, by having me do this and use her they're not interested in this because they're interested in my thoughts on her and what might she be available for open back doors for peace. They're using her to smudge up the Republicans. I knew that in December of 2015, and that someday they were going to take that can off the shelf when they needed it. They're going to shake it up. They're going to spray it all over the Republican Party. I could have told you that Thanksgiving of 2015. That's what they were doing. And now that's officially, the whole thing starts in July of 2016. That's because they're covering up all this that I'm telling you. It was all prepared. All the tracks for the Russian scandal were all laid from July of 2015 forward. It was all pre-canned, and I was part of it. I was
So are you saying that, was that before Trump was the nominee?
Trump came, oh, this was all before he was the nominee. He wasn't even well, this started July of 2015. A month before that, June, is when Donald Trump came down the escalator and announced. However, there's some evidence in my mind, and I put it out near the end of the book, that really they may have been working this since February, March 2015. See, she came over with the central bank to Washington, D.C. in February, March, and then Brennan made a trip to Moscow in April. And then in May, she got asked by her mentor to the senator. I think that her relationship is a little bit like mine, maybe, with her government. That she got asked to come over here and be this grad student, be this back channel for peace. It's very possible that this whole thing was really getting set up since March of 2015. And if that's the case, that's important because that's before Donald Trump ever came down an escalator.
Right.
They were setting up the Russian scandal. And you're so smart, Roseanne, to get this so quick. They were setting this up. The thing that's important to know is the Russia hoax wasn't technically really about Donald Trump. It was set up on the Republican Party, and it was
right.
being
No matter who was the nominee was going to get it.
Exactly. It was a coup. And in the middle, it was the beginnings of a coup on the Republican Party. And in the middle of that, they started the coup on the Democrat Party. And that's what you first asked me about, the Hillary side of things. You want to talk about that?
Yeah.
They were aware of a foreign government that wanted to bribe her, Azerbaijan. I reveal it in the book. And they taught me, the FBI agents taught me about a sting and the legal theory of stings and how they work, how Hillary had tripped it, and now Comey had authorized. Well, this is the key part, that Comey, and my book explains like word for word and how the exact speech they gave me and how they asked me to do this. But at the end of this, they asked me that the folks in New York, the squad in New York, are asking your help. Comey has authorized a sting on Hillary, and they want you to get her to in the position to accept this bribe. And
okay, so wait a minute. I'm all mixed up now.
Okay.
Comey, who later exonerates her and says we're not going to do nothing about 33,000 illegally deleted emails. He is the one that wants to set her up.
Yes, exactly. And it all becomes clear when you read the book closely. Your reviewers read the book, Danger Close. It all lays it out. He wanted me to bribe her. And I said, when they asked me, I said, gentlemen, this is I've done everything for Uncle Sam's on a handshake. But you're asking me to get involved in a federal election and bribe a presidential candidate. I'm going to need something on a piece of paper for this. And they said, let's go back to the office. They came back 2 or 3 days later, and they said, we've been told to tell you we can't give you a piece of paper. Now, this word for word, we can't give you a piece of paper, but the director says if you'll go to Washington, D.C., you can be shown a piece of paper. And I said, oh, this is coming from the director. And 2 federal agents leaned into me and said, and I said, oh, this is coming all the way from the president? And 2 federal agents leaned in and said, I said, well, gentlemen, you can tell Director Comey and President Obama that from them is good enough for me. Consider Hillary bribe. What do you need? And they told me, Patrick, you got to find the somewhere in the world, there's going to be a room in the next 2 months. You're to bring about this state of affairs. Somewhere in the world, there's going to be a room. We don't care where. And Hillary Clinton's going to walk into that room, and the bag man from Azerbaijan is going to walk into that room, and they're going to spend 10 minutes alone together in that room. You pull that out, and you make that happen any way you want. And I said, okay, now you understand I'm going to be bribing people and stuff. And they said, yes. And I'm not going to tell you how one does something, like goes to a country like Azerbaijan and shows them you're the type of guy who can and will do things like this and finds their bag man and works this out. We'll leave that part of the story for another day.
Okay. All right.
But what's key to know is on January 14th, 2016, in a hotel room in Washington, Hillary Clinton met with and accepted a bribe from the bag man from Azerbaijan. I can tell you just how it was done. Shall I walk you through how it was done that morning?
Yeah.
She was quite interesting. She was on the, I think it was the 8th floor, and her assistant was on the 5th floor. And by prior arrangement with her, how this was done was her limousine was supposed to leave at 9 a.m. The bag man was brought in at 8:30, taken up to the 5th floor, and went into her assistant's room. At 8:47, she leaves her hotel room on the 8th floor, leaves it a little bit early than you would for a 9 a.m. limousine, but leaves it, goes down, hops off the elevator on the 5th floor, and goes down and into her assistant's room, and the assistant steps outside the door. So now Hillary Clinton's alone with that bag man for 10 minutes. She came out, comes in, gets in the elevator, down, gets in her limousine, and leaves at 9:01, 9:02. It's not in her schedule, but it happened the morning of January 14th, 2016, in a hotel room in Washington. And so there's the end of. So this story really has 4 segments to it.
What came from it? What was the money for? What did it buy? Did it just go to the Clinton Foundation?
No, it was a direct deposit to a numbered account in Azerbaijan. And why don't I organize, so this just doesn't turn into a kaleidoscope. Why don't I organize this, what I'm telling you? There's really 4 chapters to what I'm telling you tonight, Roseanne.
Okay.
And the first chapter is that setup of the Russian collusion hoax.
Right.
Me in the middle of that, setting that up. And that was for
that was just a practice to get fake FISAs.
That was to get fake FISAs on the Republicans. That was to get it so whoever came to power in the Republican Party had FISAs on. They had contacts with a Russian girl on. They had pictures of one. They had movies of her standing up and asking one candidate a bunch of questions. They had her, going out to dinner with other Republicans. So they were letting her smudge up the Republican Party in a way they normally would never let happen. So that's chapter 1. Chapter 2 is this bribe that I'm telling you about. Chapter 1 happened in the fall of 2015. Chapter 2, the bribe, happened on January 14th, 2016. However, I'm not done with chapter 2. What's really important is that question you just asked. You're so damn smart. I remember our interview we did in December 2020. I realized, Roseanne, you are so quick. There's so many schmucks around, and you are what's important. And if you guys will listen to the next few minutes, you will understand.
We can't wait.
We're not going anywhere.
Your audience will understand the last 9 years in a way it has not happened before.
Wait for them to understand it.
This is what happened. A few days later, after that meeting, I met with my handlers. And they told me, I thought they were going to be, they're very formal. I call them the men in black. I don't even like to say the FBI, because really the FBI is not as bad as everybody thinks. The FBI is good. It got hijacked from the top in a way I'm going to explain.
Right. Like everything.
Yeah, it got hijacked from the top. It got captured. And this is how it got captured. They said, Patrick, we need to tell you. So I thought they were going to be exciting, and they were going to tell me, because they had the room bug, they were going to tell me, yes, she did go in and she accepted it, and blah, 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 what was said or whatever, show me a transcript maybe, celebrate. They're just the opposite. These guys were stern as could be. And they said, Patrick, this mission has been reanalyzed, and the whole mission is being scrubbed, and we need you to forget any of this ever happened. And I said, why? What's going on, fellas? You could have her indicted next week. They said, no, Patrick, it's been analyzed again from the top, and we've realized. So this conversation is about January 20 of 2016. So the beginning of the presidential campaign. But her coronation was inevitable. And they said, Patrick, we we see there, it's been analyzed. She's going to be president. Nothing can stop that. So what she's going to do is her first day in office, she's going to send her people over to the FBI and they're going to ask who was part of investigating Hillary Clinton. And anyone who was part of this is going to be destroyed. And Patrick, this includes us. It includes our chain of command. It includes you too, Patrick. So this mission has been scrubbed from the very highest levels. We need you to promise us you will forget every moment of this. And I said, yes, sir, I promise.
I understand the fear there. I really do. Don't we all?
Yeah. Well, it was also, they were thinking, it didn't make any sense to me for a number of reasons. One, they would have analyzed it that way before I did it. It took quite a lot of law breaking to make this thing happen. Secondly, they were acting panicked or scared, and these are not men who get scared. These are guys.
Oh, right. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Third, it felt like the right thing to do. I know this sounds corny. I know I'm associated with the hard republic right now because of this side of my life. I had kept to the ethics of a military officer. I never criticized either president. I was always very. Right. One of the reasons I always embrace the Libertarian Party.
Of course, you weren't a Trump lover, right?
I wasn't a Trump hater. I was never a Trumper. I was like a military officer. Whoever wins, that's who I'm going to serve. That's who I'm going to. Right. And I sort of 95% agree with Trump about things. 95%. Yeah. So stylistically, we're different. I'm a Yankee from northern New Hampshire and Vermont. We're kind of plain, and we see Trump as brash. But you know what? Even that kind of eventually started to grow on me too. But I wasn't so it wasn't about that. But they told me this, and it wasn't sitting with me. I thought the right thing to do. Folks, we spent the 90s with a Democrat in the White House under investigation. That's right. The Clintons. Let's give the Democrats a chance to pick someone clean, and they can move forward. We can't just do this again. And so there was another meeting in the first week but they gave me my instructions, and I said, okay, I'll forget it. I went home, and that was not sitting well with me. And this is where the story gets very pointed. Right. They said, I met them again in the first week of February, and they brought another man to the meeting, and the other man was another FBI agent. But they told me that that there were provisions in the law that made it such that if the CIA wanted to, the director of the CIA can basically take the steering wheel of the FBI.
Is that Brennan? That's Brennan, right?
Brennan. And that Brennan, and I think they indicated several months earlier over the Maria stuff, had signed that and was now running the FBI as far as any Russian matters went. And from now on, this man would be sitting in the room with us auditing, and he was the FBI liaison to Director Comey's personal liaison to Director Brennan. He's going to be sitting in the meetings from now on. And this is where they eventually let their hair down and explain to me the truth. And you can, in the next 60 seconds, your viewers will now understand what's really happened in the last 9 years. You ready for this one?
Yeah, ready. Hey, have you guys heard about this new superfood that seems almost too good to be true? It has thousands upon thousands of 5-star reviews and literally life-changing testimonials from users. ARRM. Colostrum is a proprietary concentrate that harnesses over 400 living bioactive nutrients that strengthen the barriers of your body and fuel cellular health for thousands of research-backed health benefits. Okay, it strengthens immunity, ignites your metabolism, fortifies gut health, activates hair growth, Jake.
It's not working.
And skin radiance, powers fitness performance and recovery, and confers powerful anti-aging benefits. ARRM colostrum is premium bovine colostrum concentrate.
Crazy, right?
ARRM starts with sustainably sourced colostrum from grass-fed cows from our co-op of dairy farms in the USA. that strictly abide by calf first sourcing, so they're not taking any baby's milk.
No.
Using only surplus milk, so it's ethically sourced.
You know, I know we sell a lot of health products, and I was laughing about that today because you and I are probably the least healthiest people.
I don't think so.
And then I don't know.
We're all wearing beauty products,
Yeah, that's true.
taking all this stuff.
And then the people that listen to our show, I've seen a couple of them on Twitter. I don't know that they're taking any beauty products either, to be fair. But obviously, this is something that people are aligning with our audience. And if you're buying this stuff, it's better for you. You want to live a long time. And, you know, you want your strength for the gulag.
Well, they've given us a great offer for my audience. Okay, you receive 15% off on your first order. So go to tryamara.com/RB or enter RB to get 15% off of your first order. That's ARRMRA.com/RB today.
It's actually really good.
What they told me was, Patrick, this is early February 2016. What I was told, I'll say it now, once there was actually a fourth federal involved that actually said most of this to me, but the other three then confirmed it. But I'll leave that fourth federal out of it. That Patrick, what's really going on is that President Obama has his people across the federal bureaucracy now, but especially the Department of Justice. Remember, this is 8 years into his term. So,
Right.
especially the Department of Justice. Hillary Clinton is going to be president for 8 years, and nothing's going to change that. But think of it this way. Think of there as being a Bunsen burner in the Department of Justice. Do you remember what a Bunsen burner is from high school chemistry?
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing you turn up and down, the flame, the butane. Your Bunsen. Think of there as being a Bunsen burner. And the information about the bribe is going to be sitting on that Bunsen burner, Hillary's bribe. The hand on the Bunsen burner is going to be one of Barack Obama's people. And if Hillary's a good girl and defends Obamacare and such, that flame stays low. If she's a bad girl and starts thinking for itself, it gets turned up. And that way, President Obama is going to manage Hillary Clinton for the 8 years she's president. And then Michelle's going to run. And Patrick, that's the plan. And I was later to learn that this plan was called Operation Snow Globe.
Snow globe.
Snow Globe. We had, Christmas that get a little glass ball that you shake, and this was a snow globe. They wanted Hillary Clinton in a snow globe that Obama and Brennan and Comey could shake up anytime they wanted while she's president. My bribe was the lure. It was the bait to lure her to step into that snow globe. Capiche? Capiche?
Yeah. Blackmailed.
Repeat that back, because you explain things so well. How would you
Well, she's blackmailed, so therefore compromised and owned.
And owned, which means effectively, if she's then president for 8 years, and then Michelle's installed, that gives us 24 years of Barack Obama.
Yeah, of Obamacare, which is basically a sin tax on the poor.
Yeah. But even more broadly, remember how he came in saying, I want to fundamentally transform America? That gives somebody, since Washington, we've had this tradition of two. And it was just, this is a fellow who thinks he knows so much. He's going to fundamentally transform, and he wants 24 years to do it. So this was all a coup. And if it feels like you're living through a coup, I promise you, you are living through a coup. It all started around Thanksgiving 2015 to 2016, and I was part of it. So after I received this threat, I'll close chapter 2 on this last point. They leaned over to me and they said, so when we tell you, Patrick, that you have to erase this, every second of this from that memory of yours, we're telling you it's a matter of life and I said, and they said, and two FBI agents stared at their shoes as the third guy threatened my life. And he didn't quite say death. He said, when we tell you, you got to erase everything, every second of this from that memory of yours. It's a matter of life and I said, yes, sir, I get it. And so there was that moment, and two FBI, I want to emphasize, these guys all turned out to be good guys. As hard as that may be to believe, they protected me. I haven't gone into it, but they saved my life. These three guys ended up saving my life.
Wow,
because
this is like a Bourne novel.
yeah. Well, it reads, as they say in your industry in Hollywood, don't they say sometimes of plays and sitcoms that it reads better than it played? You know, it's more fun in the reading than actually watching. This
Well,
whole
living it, I'm sure, was
yeah
horrifying.
yeah it's not nearly as much fun to live through as it may sound like. So
Yeah.
that was the end of chapter 2. Any questions on that before we go to chapter 3 and 4?
Nope,
No.
keep going. I'm totally on board. I want to hear 3.
It's so great to deal with someone smart, and how interesting that after Flynn, who is a genius, getting to work with Flynn is like getting to work with Steve Jobs. He's really just so
Yeah.
smart. But I remember what you're really, I know how smart you are and how quickly you get things from our, well, okay, so that was the end of chapter 2. Now we go to chapter 3. Chapter 3 is a flashback of 10 years. Are you ready to flash back with me from 2016 to 2006? You ready?
Mhm.
Yes.
I first became, after I took Overstock.com public, I became known as I ended up in a fight against Wall Street. In this very public fight, I knew 2008 was coming. I understood some of the factors, and I tried to alert all the authorities you would think you would alert. And what I discovered from NASDAQ and NYSE and the SEC and the Senate Banking Committee and the House Financial Services Committee and the financial press of Wall Street, I had the proof that something very corrupt was going on. And I thought the world worked like it does in the Pelican Brief, when Julia Roberts figures out the scheme of the evil corporation and she makes it public, and the DOJ swoops in and the Washington Post swoops in. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. That's not at all what happens. What happens is all that corruption is feeding a lot of mouths, and when you start to talk about it, the whole world descends. So that happened, and I was very surprised. But the Senate Judiciary Committee, and I've always told that story publicly that way before, that all that I discovered was all of Washington was corrupt. No one would help. The people and institutions you think are looking. We had Harvard economists, we had Wall Street, Goldman insiders, we had every bit of shred of evidence you could have, and we tried to get the SEC and all these other people that there was a mass crack in the financial system, and hedge funds were looting hundreds of billions and probably trillions out of the system, and it was showing
Right.
a profit. And we had every scrap of this to prove it, and yet I had all these doors slammed in my face, until finally the Senate Judiciary Committee grabbed a hold of me and they brought me into their warm embrace. And I know this all sounds delusional, but are you following my story, Roseanne, so far?
Yeah.
I
knew about the HSBC bank hack too, that those, anonymous hacked HSBC bank. And I think that was in 2006. And they knew it too. They put it all out there, every single bit of it. And,
credit cards.
Obama couldn't wait remember when he got elected, he couldn't wait, tripped over himself to run back and give all the money to the banks.
Yeah, he did the exact opposite of what they should have done. They should have ring-fenced the 19 systemically important banks at the center of the system and said, we're going to protect everything outside them, all the community banks, all the regional banks, but we're going to let Wall Street burn. They did just the opposite. They protected them and said, we're going to put the United States Treasury to support them, and we're going to let all the regionals and community banks burn.
Yeah, we're going to let everybody's retirement funds go, and,
Yeah, but we got
their house bubble burst and, destroy communities.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing I was realizing in 05 to 08, that our federal government, we think it's protecting us from them. No, it's been captured and turned against us. The economists even have a term for that called regulatory capture. But anyway, so I'll move on. There was one group in Washington, and I always kept this secret, that there was actually one group in Washington who was quite honest. It was the Senate Judiciary Committee, and both sides, Democrat and Republican. In fact, it was run at the time by a Democrat named Arlen Specter. Then he switched to Republican for a term or two, And then he switched back to Democrat at the end of his life. So he was really this great institutionalist. And he was admired by both sides. And he was the Senate chairman, the Judiciary chairman. But there were other senators on both sides, part of what happened. And what happened was they had me basically spy against the government for them. They had me going around taking in the chin from federal agencies and just continued taking in the chin, fighting Wall Street. But really, they had my back. And what they told me, Patrick, is
that's great to know. It's so great to know that they were on our side, the people.
They were the Senate Judiciary and both sides, Dems and Republicans. And what they told me was the following story. They said, Patrick, we're the ultimate protectors of the Constitution because we have the mandate to investigate corruption. And corruption is anything that could be touched by a civil or criminal penalty counts as corruption, which means that we technically can look into anything we want to look into in the United States, from the manufacture of nuclear weapons to anything, and no one gets to tell us no. And so it was under that umbrella that I spent like a year interacting with other parts of the government and reporting on them to the Senate Judiciary Committee and other members of Congress and the SEC and other regulatory bodies. So it was very strange because the world saw me as getting beat up. Byrne, why are you getting beat up? These people are going to throw you in prison. They didn't understand that the whole time I had this 800-pound gorilla standing behind me, and I knew that none of these people were going to lay a glove on me ultimately. So after about a year of this, we reached this very funny point, and this is kind of the crucial moment in this book. This happened in September of 2006. I was told to come. Senator Hatch called and said, come alone to such and such a place in D.C. Don't bring anybody. Don't bring a lawyer. I went. There was a room with at least 7 senators in it, Democrats and Republicans, including this Democratic chairman, Democrat turned Republican, detransitioning. Is that what they call it now? Detransitioning. Detransitioning back to Democrat. And they said, and I know this sounds crazy, but I can tell you that this story's now been out there for a year, and there's a number of journalists who have confirmed this, and you'll see it confirmed on the screen very shortly. Someone else has confirmed it, but I'm not going to say who yet. They called me back and they said I was surrounded by 7. It was the strangest meeting of my life. They were standing in a room, 7 senators around me, and they said, we think that you're right, Patrick, about what you've been saying publicly about corruption and what you're showing us. See, let me back up one last second. In that period, there's 2 stories to follow. One is what I learned about Wall Street and the Wall Street corruption. But the other story, more important really, is how did Washington, D.C. respond? And it responded in a way that showed they didn't care at all. It responded in a way that they were captured. And the Senate and Judiciary was focusing on that. And they became convinced I was right about what I was saying about Wall Street. But they were also saying, look, joining me in saying, look at how these Washington institutions that should be responding are not responding.
Mom, we keep talking about how bird flu is the next pandemic. Because we're all, you and I are on all the internets and we're reading all sorts of stuff. But I think there's some truth to it. And they did find that avian flu trace in milk. So whether it's a coincidence or not, there is a lot of stuff, comms, if you will, on the internet about bird flu being the next COVID, and it's even more deadly. And we know that it's an election year. So, one of the products we always push is those medical emergency kits, contagion kits, and all the stuff from the wellness company. So I'd like you to keep telling people where to go, because these are obviously helping a lot of people.
And us.
Yeah, no, we have a bunch.
We have a bunch of them.
The contagion kit's really
because it's the only one of its kind. This prescription contagion emergency kit from the Wellness Company provides you with a carefully selected assortment of effective medications for bird flu, COVID-19, and other respiratory illnesses. Ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, HCQ, Z-Pak, Tamiflu, and budesonide, along with the nebulizer, can help you rest easy knowing that you have emergency meds on hand, along with a guidebook for safe use. Backed by research from experts like Dr. Peter McCullough, The wellness company's Contagion Emergency Kit is a must-have for every American family. Every American should have at least one of these kits in their home. We do. Avoid the chaos, wait times, and price of the hospital and have exactly what you need for as low as the cost of a single doctor's visit. So, to be prepared for the unexpected, listeners can go to twc.help/RB and grab your Contagion Emergency Kit right now. That's twc.help/RB and use promo code RB for 10% off and free shipping.
Yeah, just buy it and store it. Just be ready.
Kits are only available in the USA. Yeah, have it on hand. You don't have to freak out.
It's an emergency kit. Contagion emergency kit.
Right.
The crux of chapter 3 is this. They called me in. I go in and they say, Patrick, we told you. Sorry, I don't want to lose my voice on you.
Yeah.
We told you that we have the ultimate. Our power transcends any power within government because we investigate corruption. We can do anything we want. We think you're right. There's some kind of corrupt force taking over the U.S. government. This was a Democrat with another couple Democrats there and another couple few Republicans, including, incidentally, the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, that big guy from Missouri, Kit Bond. But the others were Republicans and Democrats from the Judiciary Committee. They said, we think you're right about not just what you're saying about Wall Street, but what's going on underneath the table here in Washington. It's like there's some force is taking over the United States government through corruption. And we can't even tell you what it is. Some days it seems like it's a foreign government. Some days it's internal. We can't even tell you. But we can tell you it's our job to stop it. And we can't stop it. And he went on describing it. And I was, just for a moment, I was so elated because I'd spent 18 months telling the world exactly that and having the whole world and newspapers bash me. This guy's crazy. No one should listen to him, blah, blah, blah. You know, and yet here these important senators from both sides have looked at all the same evidence and everything as I have, and they say, you're right. And they say, Patrick, we're going to make this request of you. Well, I said, finally, I know, sir, this is what I've been saying. How do you even stop something like this? And he says, Patrick, we're going to stop it because we have you and you're going to stop it. That's why you're here. And all these senators are like, yeah, that's right, why you're here. And they told me that I had an assignment from them. And the assignment was to disrupt that corrupt force taking over the United States government. And they said, we may not be senators when you finish. We may not be alive when you're finished. But we like the cut of your jib. We got that you're a bit different, Patrick, and we got you're a horse of a different color. I remember one of the senators doing that and everybody laughing. They got that I'm a little. When I was in the hospital with cancer, I ended up going from mathematical logic to studying the intellectual history of the U.S. Constitution. So I'd say I probably have the same fervor about that other people have about Christianity or Judaism or Islam or Hinduism or something. To me, I learned the philosophical history and I understand the logic of it and how it's also what makes me a huge fan of Frederick Douglass. He understood.
Me too. Absolutely.
Isn't he the great? It's unbelievable that people are not being taught about him anymore. He was the greatest figure.
Nobody's taught that he founded the Republican Party.
Hallelujah. Absolutely. And his great message was, even though he gave the greatest July 4th speech in history called What to a Slave is the 4th of July, that's very critical of the United States and saying, look, these principles, you've got all these principles, but look at this, you don't live up to them. But his great difference between today about him and today's radicals is he saw in the principles of the United States this handle, the first society that had built itself with a way to crank a handle and improve itself and improve and improve and improve. And the last thing you ever want to do is get rid of that handle. And he understood our principles very, very well. He was allowed to. He understood
that the Constitution is a malleable thing that continually grows, refines, brings, real progress, not progressive
Yeah,
progress, but that it can change and evolve, and it's for the people to evolve a government that suits them.
and it's an extraordinary advance in human history. You can tell the
Absolutely.
history of the West as 2,500, well, you can tell the history of the world as 10,000 generations of slavery. And then from that,
That's right.
Abraham went forth and started trying to find a different way. And the so called passion of the Western mind is this hunt for slavery, hunt to leave slavery and get freedom.
Absolutely.
And it
Well,
goes,
there you have the entire Torah.
say again?
That there you have the entire Torah, the exit from slavery, and the desire to create just law.
Yes, exactly. And you can tell it in terms of the history of Jerusalem, Athens, and Rome,
Right.
Britain, and then the Netherlands. And then to me, the whole story reaches its apotheosis in the US Constitution. And Frederick Douglass understood that. So he was saying these principles, this is the most important intellectual, political advance in history. Don't ever give up these principles. Whereas today's radicals are saying we got to jettison those principles. They're crazy. It's the exact opposite of what we. Anyway, so I feel that way about it. And maybe, I don't know why, they picked me. I guess I might be a bit strange. They had heard that they had become aware of my prior relationship with the United States government, and they had learned a lot about it. And evidently, in the course of that, they were told several times that Patrick is known in certain circles as somebody who does, and the expression that the senator used with me was, they say that you're somebody who does extreme things to accomplish whatever you're asked to accomplish, Patrick. So we won't go into why that is, but two of them actually said that to me. They knew about that. Whatever reason, they told me all this. They told me this night, the seven of them standing there, it was an Indian summer afternoon, and they said, we're going to be with the president tomorrow night, and we're going to show him this letter, and we want you to read it. And they held up a page and a half letter. I stood with my hands behind my back, and a senator held it, so I was this close trying to understand it. And the first paragraph said how concerned they were about, the phrase I remember is systemic corruption infiltrating the federal institutions of our national government, something like that, and then or our nation's government. And then the second paragraph says the Senate Judiciary Committee requests that Patrick Byrne be afforded extraordinary latitude under the laws of the United States of America to, and it was there, I'm not quite sure, but it was like investigate and disrupt corruption or something very action oriented. And I was very, and I got a chance to sort of glance at this for 15, 20 seconds. And then they said, look, this is not a pardon. You can't go kill anyone. But Patrick, your country needs you to make this the center of your life. You're going to figure out what is this corruption, and you're going to disrupt it. And we may not be here, we may not be senators, we may not be alive, but this letter is going to be sitting the rest of your life in a safe in Washington, D.C. And so now that really happened. And there's staffers of the time who've confirmed that really happened. And there's people who have sat with senators who say, very well, a number of journalists, Matt Taibbi knows about this letter. Sheila Kal-Hakhtar of the New Yorker knows. It's been confirmed by several people. It has not been made public, but there'll be more on that this year. So that really happened. And let me ask you something, and then we'll close chapter 3. I'll close this with a question. We're going to fast forward 10 years again. I'm now sitting in a room with 3 federal officials, 3 federal agents, who are telling me basically, we've just bribed Hillary. I've been told to forget it. I won't drop it. And they tell me what's really going on, Patrick, is, yeah, you bribed her. You thought it was for a sting, but actually it's going to be used to blackmail her. So Obama, Brennan, and Comey keep her in a snow globe for 8 years. Then she steps down and Michelle takes over, and that's the plan. Would you say, Roseanne, that counts as systemic corruption infiltrating the federal institutions of our nation's government?
Absolutely.
Not only that, I'd say that's RICO.
You sure? Because I'm going to be telling this to 12 citizens, good and true, someday, I think. So would you say that?
RICO, it's sedition. It's canceling the votes of Americans. It's a coup.
It's a coup. It's hijacking the government. This is February of 2016. This is all November of 2015. Well, the fall of 2015, I was dating Maria, having this affair, but really setting up the origins of the Russia hoax. In January, February, I have the bribe on Hillary. They tell me to forget it, the Bunsen burner, and now they're threatening my life. And if you agree that that is systemic corruption infiltrating the federal institutions of our nation's government, that is a very good thing. Because at that point, I decided to avail myself of extraordinary latitude under the laws of the United States of America. I decided on the spot
freezing.
I was going to ruin their day. I was going to destroy them the moment I got a kill shot. I was going to destroy them, destroy these people, my chain of command behind all this, the moment I got a kill shot. And what I said was, yes, sir, I understand. I promise I will erase every moment of this from my memory. I promise. But on the inside, I'm thinking, I'm going to bring your whole world crashing down the moment you sons of bitches give me a kill shot. And like I say, I think my handlers were actually good men. I think that it was very clear I think their lives were threatened too. There were families. They all had families. I could tell they looked sick to their stomach. They were not the kind of guys who did this type of stuff. They looked sick to their stomach. Looked to me like they couldn't even look me in the eye, frankly. So that's the end of chapter 3. Are you with me now?
Yes.
We had the setup of the Russia hoax, the setup of the Hillary Clinton thing, and then my flashback from. So the setup of the Russian thing really in the second half of 2015 began. The setup of the Hillary Clinton bribery and blackmail was January, February. And then I've given you the 2016, and then I've given you the flashback to 2006. Does it all make sense?
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
So now we get to the 4th chapter. The 4th chapter is a little rough.
Oh, boy. This is the meat.
This is the meat. The 4th chapter I like to call the rape and murder of Maria Butina. You remember Maria Butina? The redhead. The rape and murder of Maria Butina. Now, I'll spoil the plot. I'll give you the punchline up front. Maria wasn't murdered. She's a senator in Russia today, a very famous senator, and probably being groomed to be president someday, incidentally.
Really?
Oh, yeah. She's being groomed to be. She's a very special senator. She's got the most important political TV show in Russia. She's being groomed to be president. She's a very special woman. I wish they had listened to me about that. She wasn't raped either. It was just another sting. But that's the punchline to this story. I left you in February of 2016. Well, they came back to me in July of 2016. Now, Trump became the formal candidate in the last week of July 2016. That's when the Republican convention was. He became president. But candidate. I'm sorry. Thank you. It shows you're listening. Good one. Became candidate. It was clear by the beginning of July it was inevitable. All the things people were talking about to derail it, different Mickey Mouse games at the convention, all that was clearly unwinnable. So in the first few days of July 2016, before he was the candidate, but when it had become clear he couldn't be stopped, they asked to meet me again. Now, they'd had me break up, by the way, just after the bribing of Hillary stuff, they had me break off with Maria for late February 2016. Early July, they come back and they say, listen, we make a mistake having you break off with Maria. That was a big mistake. There is something Russian going on here, and it's become the highest national priority for us to get to the bottom of it. Now, these are these same 3 federal agents. And again, they were very decent about how they said this. They said, Patrick, we want you to know the United States government does not do certain things. This is one of the things in all our careers, we've never heard of this being asked of a citizen. But you're being asked to seduce Maria Butina again and get inside her head and find out anything she knows about what's going on here, anything that might be going on with Russia here. And what did I think, Roseanne, you smart cookie? What did I think on the spot?
Here we go again.
I think there's my kill shot. I'm going to set them up on rape and murder. What they said.
Oh, I didn't. Okay.
What they said was, you're being asked to do this, and we're going to be leaving our meetings with you and going back directly to video conference to report to Director Comey and Director Brennan. It's the highest national priority. Get to the bottom of anything Russian going on here. Now, I for a year had been telling them there's something Russian going on, and they had been saying, "What? What? We don't say anything. Hey, let's talk about this other thing. What do you think about this or that?" They were doing anything to keep that. But now in July of 2016, they come out and say, "Oh, you were right. We should never have had you break up. We need you to get back inside Maria's head. We need you to find out what's going on, anything Russian. And we will be leaving our meetings with you and going back to our offices and reporting directly on video conference to John Brennan and James Comey. And this is all being done at the personal request of President Obama."
Okay. Okay.
And I said, there's my
I
kill
get-
shot. There's my
I
kill.
get
See, the Russian hoax, they had told me that it was Brennan had signed off and taken control of the FBI and was running everything Russia I had been involved in. And Comey is the one who sent me the orders to bribe Hillary Clinton. And who the hell knows? And I should be clear, there's names in this world, it's a hall of mirrors. There are names, very important people, and their names are not on an org chart anywhere. And it could very well be names I'm not even using, names I don't even know. But what they told me to get me to do this was they were using the names Brennan and Comey. And then they told me it was done at the personal request. You're being asked, they're doing it at the personal request of President Obama. But that came later. Come to think of it, that came a bit later in the conversation. And when they told me it was Brennan and Comey, that's actually the moment that I said, there's my kill shot. There's the kill shot I've been waiting for. I'm going to get them the information they want because this is national security, but I'm going to set them up on rape and murder as I do so. And this is how I'm going to do that. And this all flashed for me in about 3 seconds. I saw this play. I would restart a relationship with Maria, and I would tell them, and I would tell her that I had to do it in a way that would historians and prosecutors could study later and find me faultless, and also that she would create a pure mental memory for her. And it took a couple months to do that of schmoozing her because I'd been kind of a jerk when I broke off the first time, schmoozing her and stuff. And I eventually got her to come out to Utah to visit. And what I told her was, this time, Maria, we're going to have old-fashioned European courtship. And you are going to sleep in the guest room. And you're going to visit me for 6 months. And if after 6 months you wish to leave your boyfriend and marry me, we will be married. And only then will we sleep together again. And she thought this was so. Our first relationship had been heavily physical, I would say, but without saying any more, gentlemen, that's probably more than a. But the second time I said, I laid this on her, and she thought it was very kind and very romantic. But meanwhile, I reported up my chain of command, crazy stuff. Are you following me?
Yeah.
So and I saw all this in a heartbeat, that this is what I would do, that this is how I would play her, but I was going to then report other stuff up my chain of command. And I said my verbal response to them was, gentlemen, it's not exactly hardship duty. Consider it done. And it took me about and they were pleased, and they went back and reported that. It took about 2 months of schmoozing and schmeichling and everything else, and to get her to give me another try. And she came to Utah. We had this wonderful long weekend, but I was a perfect gentleman and played it that, and I wanted to make that memory in her head. So later, when asked to testify, she would remember it that way. So I was like this incredible gentleman. After the weekend, I met with my handlers, and this is where it gets tricky. Are you following me? Am I going too fast?
No, it's good.
I said the first time I met with them, it was a quick sort of a drive-by meeting, just of a few minutes. And I said, yeah, the weekend went well and this and that. And they said, are you back? As I was leaving, they were saying, were you physical with her again? And I said, yeah. And now I normally don't talk this way. You and your viewers are going to forgive me, right? I
Of
hope.
course.
I
Oh
said, yeah,
yeah, we want to hear the dirty part.
don't get to hear the dirty parts, but you'll hear that I said something very out of character. In fact, I kind of blew it a bit. I said, I was trying to indicate to them that she meant nothing to me, so I'd be comfortable doing whatever. And I said, yeah, I'm back in the saddle. I shagged her all night long. Don't worry. And that wasn't how we talked to each other. And I remember it was a little bit, I overdid it, but there was a moment of suspicion, but I was getting out of the car anyway. So that was that.
It's like that movie. What's his name?
Austin Powers,
Yeah.
psychedelic. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. I'm Dr. Evil, though, some days I think. Hey, by the way, that is the Brandenburg Gate behind me. If you can see over my left shoulder, that is
A
the
little bit.
Brandenburg Gate. History. Now that the sun's down, we'll
Oh
let you
yeah.
see a little bit
It
more of
looks
the
way
Brandenburg
better. Yeah.
Gate.
So
So,
you shagged her all night long. Yeah.
however, in reality, I did. I knew I
That's
was
what you told them.
just what I
So
told.
now they think you're a
Um,
Playboy stud type.
now they go back. They report to Brennan and Comey. Everything's cool. So I waited a couple meetings, and I waited. I had this work. Oh no. I waited a week later. I met them again and I feel terrible. My whole life, I've kept this behind. It's the honor of my life that I got asked to do stuff for my government. Honor of my life, and that I had a small role in a number of peace events and peace conversations was a huge honor of my life. I hate tattling on them like this, but here we are as a country. The country needs to know the truth, and this is what
Yeah,
happened.
absolutely. It's time.
About a week later, we met for the extended debriefing, and I carefully plotted out the night before. When you do one of these, they sit there and they take notes on every little thing you say. And I didn't tell the story in a chronological way as I normally would. I was kind of scattered in how I told it. She'd been for 4 days. We'd done this and that. There was this one night I made her lobster linguine with poached lobster. There was another time we went for a drive to a gun range. It was all these different events I scattered. But if you took the notes, and if you took the notes and fit them together, somewhere in there, I told them I had gotten her very drunk and had purposely
You're
gotten her.
laying out a crime scene.
I'm laying out a crime scene that I got her very drunk and then introduced her to pot. Now, Maria's the purist. She was the Greater Moscow powerlifting champion. She doesn't smoke pot. She doesn't do anything like that. But I told her I got her to try some pot, and she tried it and liked it. And then I slipped her a Mickey, basically. I slipped her a joint that was I got from one of our Hollywood friends. I used to be friends with Susan Sarandon, believe it or not. And Hollywood people always have the best weed. So I had actually borrowed one from her and kept it. But I told them that I got her completely blotto. And while she was out, I questioned her for like an hour or 45 minutes and could find no discrepancies while she was completely smashed. But what it also, that's a little edgy. You don't talk that way about stuff you do in the U.S. Our guys are the Eagle Scouts, and it's a disadvantage in this world because that's not how the other sides play. But our guys, you don't do stuff like this in the U.S. But it was so important. It was national, this and that, and I slipped it in different ways. But what I also slipped in was that on the third night that she was there was the night that we'd start having sex again. Well, and I did it just at the very end. And then just as I was leaving, again, not really giving them, I gave it in this very deliberately confused, disjointed way. But I constructed it so that after I left, when they added the pieces together and put them all together, what I was saying was on the third day she was there, I had taken her for a drive, taken her to gun range, got her a bit drunk at a restaurant, got her home later, made her this lobster linguine dinner, got her completely smashed, introduced her to pot, tricked her, got her wasted, questioned her for 45 minutes, and found no discrepancies, and then I shagged her. Now, if that's what I'm saying, if that's what all the clues piece together and tell that narrative, what is that, Roseanne?
Well, I suppose legally that's rape.
That's rape. That is absolutely rape. The whole essence of our tradition is consent.
Yeah, you drugged her and got her drunk.
Right. Everything is consent. And I have a very woke niece. I have a very woke niece who says, Patrick, you can't tell this story without explaining that, you can't just gloss over it. And for the youngsters,
You created a crime scene for them to put together that they're like, oh my God, this guy we trusted and sent there raped somebody.
raped her, and they're going to be reporting it to whom?
Brennan and Comey.
On videotape later, on video conference later that day.
Oh my God.
Why do I do
That
this, Roseanne? Why do I do this?
Um, uh, because they sent you there.
Well, let's find out how Brennan and Comey are going to react to that.
Oh yeah.
Get
Well,
it?
I have.
Reported
Yeah.
later that day. I got out of the room. That's why I told it disjointedly. If I had told it in this clear way, they would have, and they understood that's what I was saying while I was in the room, they would have jumped down my throat. Are you kidding? These were
Right.
honorable men. But
How long did it take them to figure out?
Well, I figured it would take 10 minutes. We'll get back. I designed it. I thought it would take at least a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes is what I told myself. They're going to check. They're going to double check their notes, compare it. And they're going to say, oh my God, what Byrne is saying is this is what happened. But by then I was gone. So, and I actually only fit the last piece or two in just as I was like putting my coat on or something, like just at the very end. I wanted to beat feet. So when they put it together, I wasn't in the room. Because what I wanted them to do was go back and report it to Brennan and Comey. And then let's see what Brennan and Comey do.
Right.
You with me?
Yeah. I get it. It's a sting.
It's a sting. And the next time, and just in case you're wondering, Maria Butina has already confirmed everything. I don't want to tell you well, she's already confirmed that that none of this happened. But anyway, when I meet them again a week or two later, I meet with them, and there's hatred in their eyes, and their faces are set. And we used to be, amiable to each other, very professional guys, but there's hatred in their eyes, and their notebooks are out, and they're being super formal and professional. But they don't say a damn word about it, which tells us what?
No way.
Tells us what? You smarty pants. Tells us that they don't say. What did Brennan and Comey do?
That they're protecting themselves.
They're sweeping it under the rug?
Yeah. Brennan and Comey are saying, listen, agents, we don't give a good goddamn if Patrick Byrne drugged and raped Maria Butina. We got a Russian hoax to set up here. We need them for that.
That's right.
That's right. You don't say a damn thing about this to Byrne. You don't ask him a question. You don't say a peep. And that's why the next time we meet, they're sitting there with their jaws clenched and being professional, and they're just going on as if. But they're sitting, thinking they're sitting with a rapist. They're thinking that they're sitting with a guy who, and so they hate me, but they're not showing it. But they're showing none of their normal. And that tells us that Brennan and Comey said, you don't say a damn word. You don't ask a follow-up question, nothing. We got something more important going on here, agents. We got a Russian hoax to set up.
We have to frame an innocent president of the United States.
So I decided to take a step further. You ready for this one?
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to, am I boring you? Just let me know.
You're not.
Oh, hell no. I will let you know when I'm bored, but I ain't yet.
I say, I wait till they come back. A couple meetings later, they say, meanwhile, through the telephone and stuff with Maria, I'm being lovey-dovey. I'm sending her poetry. We're sending her lovey-dovey texts, all this stuff. And I know it's all being read, of course. And I said, but they come back a meeting or two later, and they said, the folks back east want to know, can you really do this without falling in love? And I said, sorry, go ahead.
That's so twisted because it's like, can you really rape somebody without falling in love?
Can you really be manipulating her and playing these games with her without caring about it? And so I told
Horrible.
So, Ma, we we talk about liver health and your fatty liver and all that stuff all the time. And we did an ad recently and it said, we throw everything at our livers. And I did the usual smoking and drinking, pretty much everything you and I do.
Mhm.
But there was a thing called statins, and we had no idea what it was. Well, I talked to Eli, my best bud. I hadn't talked to him in a long time. He actually went to the doctor and got his body checked. And his heart didn't come back right because he got vaccinated. But I can't tell him that. But anyway, long story short, a statin helps you with blood pressure. It's a blood pressure medication. So he's on them now. And I looked him up. He's trying to be healthy, and I'm happy for him. But now I know that while he's taking care of a heart issue, he's now probably doing a little bit of damage to his liver and kidneys and all that stuff. So I actually turned him on to this product outside of the podcast and said, if you're going to be taking statins, they mentioned in the ad, this is good shit. He looked it up and he ordered some. We got a little thumbs up for that. So
Is he feeling good?
I mean, he just started. I just talked to him last week, but I'm just saying, everyone out there, you probably know someone in your family that is doing damage to their liver. It's probably every single one of us, and that's why we push this product so hard.
It's common, right?
It is. It's important. The liver is very important.
It's important to start protecting your liver today. You can do so with Liver Health Formula because it's an all-natural supplement which contains 11 clinically proven botanicals that help recharge and protect your liver. The company already helped more than 2 million fellow Americans with their products. It isn't surprising that the Liver Health Formula is so very popular. You can try Liver Health Formula and receive a free bottle of nano-powered omega-3 to keep your heart healthy. Try Liver Health Formula by going to getliverhealth.com/RB and claim your free bonus gift. Remember, your liver is responsible for 500 key functions. It's time you give it a boost in its performance. Go to getliverhealth.com/RB.
I decided to crank it up one more notch. They said when they came, and a couple meetings later, they said, can you really do this? The folks back east want to know, can you do this without falling in love? I said, so I remember how I told you when I was sick with cancer in my 20s, I did graduate school. I got a PhD in philosophy from Stanford, and Stanford was fabulous to me. Stanford philosophy was a big part of my life. We're not so friendly these days, but they were, but I have a PhD in philosophy. So when they said, can you really do this without falling in love? I said, Friedrich Nietzsche said that philosophers don't really fall in love. It's like seeing delicate little hands on a cyclops. Can you imagine a monster with tiny, dainty little hands, how ridiculous that would be? So yeah, you tell the folks back east, if they send word, I'll cut this chick's head off, bury her in the Utah desert. No one's going to know a thing.
Oh boy. What do they do?
Actually, that's some good news. 3 federal agents signed, and I'm pleased to report the good news. 3 federal agents jumped from their chairs simultaneously into gunfighter crouches. They were in gunfighter crouches, and one reached behind his back, and I heard something click out of a holster. And he sort of, yeah, but they were like standing, crowding on me. I'm still sitting there crowding, and they say, hey, Byrne, let us be perfectly clear. We don't care what orders come down from D.C. If you harm a hair on Maria Butina's head, we're going to kill you ourselves. Do you hear me? And I said, yes, sir. Got it. No murdering Maria. I got it. I really did say that. No
Wow.
murdering.
That is good news, though. That is good news so far.
Isn't it? And they said, we don't care what order they literally said, the only word I'm not sure they used was Butina. I think they actually said, if you harm a hair on Maria's head, we're going to kill yourselves. Like they knew her themselves. I think they thought they're good, honest agents who got pulled like me into this whole. We woke up one day and discovered we were in the middle of all this. We thought we were doing real national security work until this crap starts going on like this. So they told me that. But why do I do that? That's like taking that little sting I did before with the aggravated rape. By the way, when my woke cousin wants me to use this to remind people, the whole essence of rape is that it's not consent. You have to get someone's consent.
Right.
And who gives, this is why it's so important. Like there was a Stanford swimmer who got assaulted a girl a decade ago, and he said afterward, and she was completely blotto, and he said afterwards, look, she gave her consent. She was drunk. She was totally drunk, but she gave her consent. He'd even lifted her shirt while she was like, and taken pictures and texted to his friends and stuff. So he knew she was that blotto that she, and how odd it was that he said she consented. She was drunk, but he means he doesn't understand. The only agents who can give consent are rational agents.
Right.
You know, and a drunk woman is not a rational agent. Neither, it's saying a drunk woman gave her consent is like saying my cat gave its consent to something. You can make your cat go along with something, but it's not consent. And I only mention that because in recent years, this whole child sexuality thing has come to the fore. And the simple argument is a child is not a rational agent. A child cannot consent. You can make a child go along with things, but it's not consent. So the philosophical answer just nips this whole thing in the bud, and I wish that we did more of it. It's exactly the same as rape. There's no such thing as consent from a non-rational agent. So anyway, there I was offering them. And what makes rape aggravated is when the person's drunk. So when you've got that. So I believe, I'm not a lawyer, but that. So they had them thinking I'd committed this horrible crime. Then I'd supercharge it when I offer to murder her. There's no way the U.S. government is going to let that slide. Let me tell you, no one is going to let that slide. So now, what are they going to do about it? That goes back and was studied so basically, shall I summarize and bring this to a point, this part of the extraordinary point?
Yeah.
And then we turn back over to you. I knew that the deep state, I'd figured out the path we were walking on. They were using me, thinking I was helping them with national security and peace and so forth. They were using me to set up the Republicans. Then they used me to set up Hillary Clinton. Then they threatened my life. I'm walking down this path. So what I did by doing that was I took a chainsaw and I sawed a tree so it fell across that path. So the whole Russian collusion thing had to stop. The Russian setup, whatever they were doing with me and Maria, all of that had to stop. Or else, in the depths of the deep state, some demon was going to have to sign off for any of this stuff to continue. Some demon was going to have to sign off on the aggravated rape and possible murder of a woman they knew to be innocent. You want to know what happened?
What happened?
2 weeks passed. They came back, and somebody had signed off on the aggravated rape and possible murder of a girl they knew to be innocent. They had me to continue to date her for 5 more months. And so there's your deep. So they had me date her for 5 more months. But if you want to know who's behind everything, find out who signed off on the aggravated rape and murder of Maria Butina. I've been told this is the biggest secret in government, that like there's a task force preparing the world for when this secret gets out. And because it is so, the story I'm telling, which has all been verified and it's all true, is so disruptive to the brand of America that they're like trying to figure out how to spin this. But someone in the bowels of the deep state signed off on the aggravated rape and possible murder of an innocent woman so that we could continue setting up this Russian collusion delusion so as to trap the Republican Party, having already trapped the Democrat Party with this $18 million bribe from Hillary Clinton that I facilitated that turned out to be so she could be blackmailed. But for them to continue that, someone had to sign off on the aggravated rape and murder of a girl they knew was innocent. And that's just what someone did. They had me date her. And after 5 more months, she did want to be with me in Utah. They said, no, we're learning too much. Break off with her. We're learning too much by seeing who she has dinner with around Washington, D.C. And she's putting pictures of it all on Facebook. Nothing was covert. You know, the FBI later made an argument, well, that's bad. It's because she's human terrain mapping. And she was talking to a foreign senator. She did it, taking direction. Anyway, taking hints from a foreign senator. Who knows? I won't get into the question of what she was. And it was great. How great it was. Half of Washington is doing that kind of stuff. for foreign governments. But setting all that aside, what's important, just like my Wall Street story, is how did the government react? And I put them in the position for the Russian collusion delusion to pass any further than October of 2016. Somebody had to, in the deep state, had to sign off on the rape and murder of a girl they knew was innocent. And why that's funny is what else happened in October 2016, Roseanne? And I understand you've become friendly with President Trump. I remember you guys were not so friendly years past, I heard, but you've become.
No, we were friendly. Always in Hollywood, always friendly.
He's a good guy. I like him, and I became warmer towards him from the moment he became president, and the baboons started going after him for any little thing he said. I started to really sympathize and like him more and more. But I've really come to, and I've apologized for, I said some really nasty, right before the election, I was in an interview, and I was asked, what do you think of Hillary Clinton? And I said, oh, she's terrible. She can't be president. She belongs in an orange jumpsuit. I can't tell you, well, just trust me, she can't be president. And they said, well, what do you think of Donald Trump? And because I'd always been even-handed and I had never taken one side or the other, I immediately said, oh, he's terrible too. He's just this big blowhard. He just runs his mouth. Oh, he's terrible too. And I said nasty things like that. And I wish I hadn't. I kind of I made a mistake. It's because
you didn't know.
Well, I bashed Hillary. So I felt I had to bash him, and he heard about it, and he let me know he knew about it, was angry. But some of it I felt, he wasn't my style. And I'm like a quiet northern Yankee, and he's this brash New Yorker. I agreed with him on policy, but stylistically, he wasn't my guy. But I have to say, I came to like him anyway, and more I have over the years. And none of that has anything to do with what I'm doing. I'm doing this now because it's the right thing. But anyway, yeah. So where we left things was they signed off on that. They had me date her for 5 more months. When she wanted to break up, when she wanted to be with me at the end, they said, break her heart, tell her, because we're learning too much having her do this in DC. So I broke off again. A year later, 15 months later, I think it was, when Trump met Putin, the day they met, a couple hours, it was maybe July of 2018, hours before Trump met Putin, just a couple hours, the FBI swoops in. I think they had a CNN van, as always, swoop in and arrest Maria Butina at her boyfriend's apartment in DC and make this big fanfare about it. We've discovered this Russian spy. She's, Hollywood Central casting, a striking redhead. There's all these pictures of her.
Yeah, she's beautiful.
Sniper rifles. They have this, and look at this tape. She interacted with Donald Trump in a Freedom Fest convention in Vegas in 2015. Look, she is a spy. And they played that tape 1,000 times to associate them. The whole thing was producer driven. You know what I mean? About like rock groups, or, like the Spice Girls. The Spice Girls aren't 4 girls who became friends and made music. There's some producer somewhere who said, let's have a group that's 4 hot chicks, and one will be Sporty Spice, and one's Scary Spice. I don't know all the spices. And then they write the music, and then they go find the girls to play the part. The whole thing, that's called a producer-driven group. Well, the whole thing was producer-driven. Since the day Maria landed in America, they knew all about her. They knew about all the meetings. They knew about her dinners and putting them up on Facebook. They had me open the doors. They had me schmooze some of them into place. The whole thing was producer-driven. Yet the day Trump meets Putin in July of 2018, they swoop in and arrest her. Oh, my God, we've discovered this Russian spy in D.C. And it's just, she was a perfect prop. She was a perfect prop, because by that point, Americans were starting to say, how come this Russian scandal doesn't seem to have any actual Russians in it? And then they pull up this Russian who's this redhead, sniper rifle, boots, hot chick, and she's Hollywood Central casting. She's just a prop for them to sell the whole Russian hoax.
Exactly.
And,
well, they sure did get away with it, didn't they? That nobody's been punished for it.
Well, I think if you want to find out who's beyond that, 3 federal agents. Here's the thing you need to know. 3 federal agents have a document signed by somebody Could be an assistant attorney general, could be Attorney General Loretta Lynch, could be Brennan, could be Comey, who knows? Maybe it's who it is. Sign off on it. Who signed off on that is
Well, it
behind.
would have to be somebody pretty high up.
It would be. Whoever signed off on that is behind the Russian hoax, is behind the whole Hillary Clinton, bribery and blackmail. And I think if you share my beliefs about what's happening in the last 4 years is a color revolution, and this
It is,
COVID,
absolutely.
and you see how COVID fits into it, and the suppression of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, and the preference for this vaccine that ain't even a vaccine, which the Ninth Circuit
Right.
has just confirmed, how it all fits into it, and Antifa and the rigged election. I think, and this cancelization, normalization of cancel culture, this is all one big psyop to take down the United States.
Absolutely.
I can promise you, it's not a theory. There was a coup that began around Thanksgiving of 2015. And the names used with me when these assignments started getting weird were Comey, Brennan, and eventually Obama as the. However, again, it's quite possible it's people in the shadows, and those names were being used to get me to do stuff. However, there's a simple way to find out. The Senate could find out who signed off on the rape and murder of Maria Butina, and I think we'll get that. We'll get to who's behind the Russian hoax, who's behind the whole Hillary Clinton, all bribery, that whole investigation going nowhere, but being used to set her up so they could control her. Who's behind this 2020 color revolution we're going through? Go find out who signed off on the rape and murder of Maria Butina.
Well, who signed over the United States sovereignty to the UN?
Well, you tell me. Which aspect do you mean? Are you talking about this recent World Health Organization stuff?
Well, they haven't done that one quite yet, but somebody signed over the whole internet and stuff like that to the UN. A lot of our powers, a lot of our border issues, a lot of people coming over our border are people from the UN. Nobody ever talks about that. But you know what? You're going to come back, and next time you come back, will you tell us?
I'll tell you some big secrets next time I come back. In fact, I think we ought to we've spoken enough. I think you and I ought to film the next episode and then put it in a can, just in case anything happens to me. I'm over here in lovely Germany, just in case anything in Berlin. But I don't know. Let's get back together in a couple of days.
Yeah, let's do that.
Do you want to give us one big secret to end the show, or you want to wait? I'm not going to push.
You've given us a lot of good secrets.
Is there any more? I have to push as the producer. It's my job.
What I would say,
if you come back in.
More secrets, read the book closely before we talk again. And there's a lot. I've only given you the first half of the book. There's another 40% of the book full of many more secrets to discuss. So let's get together.
Okay, well, we're going to put the book in a graphic, and I'll talk about it a little bit too all the time. But I need to. I know what you're saying, though, but I want you to say it because there's much more to it, and it goes back to Crossfire Hurricane too, doesn't it?
Well, I don't. Yeah. Okay. Well, Crossfire Hurricane started in July of 2016. And Peter Strzok said in a podcast a couple of years ago, they've gone through all these different explanations of what was their predicate to start it. And he's finally come out and said, it was Maria Butina. We learned about Maria Butina in July of 2016. And that's what got us to start Crossfire Hurricane in late July 2016. Exactly. It's a flat lie. It's not a theory. I'm a participant. I'm a witness. They knew about her in July of 2015. And they were all over her like white on rice for a year. But the Durham report correctly reports everything that happened from July of 2016 forward, but it buries all of this. And it's like volume 2 of a 2-volume report, and they kept volume 1 hidden, is effectively what the Durham report is. So you follow this.
Well, we'll all read the book, we'll chew on it, and we'll come back. We'll film the next one. and
You
we'll
let
see
me
where
know
it
when you
goes.
have time to, and I just want to make sure you understand the 4 parts. So there's the setup of the Russian hoax. There's the setup of the Hillary Clinton bribe and blackmail. There's the flashback that I was actually instructed by the Senate Judiciary Committee in '06, who told me they had a power that transcended every power within government to infiltrate and disrupt the deep state. And that gives us chapter 4. Here's the short way to say it. Who's ever really behind it, behind all these things, I tricked them or him or her, whoever, into signing off on the rape and murder of a girl they knew was innocent. And why that's so funny, Roseanne, is that was the month, October 2016 was also the month where your friend, Donald Trump, got in a whole lot of trouble for saying something locker room to another guy, as if women don't talk a little dirty to each other when they're alone. I've been in groups of 5 or 6 women when they forget a guy's there. Let me tell you, they sell things a lot.
They're way worse than we are. That's the truth.
Yeah. So that's really, and so the same month he got in trouble for saying you can grab him by, that someone in the deep state signed off on aggravated rape and murder in order to continue this domestic political espionage we were hatching. Is that the
Her
cool?
internet drops out. I'll go get her back. But can I just ask you one question before she comes back?
Sure.
When we had you on the old podcast, that was during the recount, or I think it was December during the contested election. Is there any update on that, or is that just you've kind of moved on from the whole?
Oh no! In the next, here she's back.
Yeah.
Oh, the next time we talk, we'll be talking about the election. You give me another. This was a 2-hour interview. The next time we talk, maybe by then you'll have found out who signed off on the rape and murder. And the next time we talk, we're going to be talking about elections. And
that's why we had you on the first time, and that's really to me that's the most important thing, because if we can really get people to understand what really happened in 2020, like we all know, the whole thing crumbles for the other side.
Hey everyone, part 2 will continue next Thursday, and that's when things get crazy.